Hello,
Hello.
welcome. I'm Belle. I use she, they pronouns.
I'm Maeve, I use she, her pronouns.
I'm Xavier. I use they, them pronouns.
And I'm AJ, and I use she, her pronouns, and we are VIP, very impactful people.
Alrighty. This week we are going to be talking about two films, one of which is Murder My Sweet. It follows a good old private detective, Philip Marlowe, and he is trying to make sense of this really messy job he got involved with revolving around the theft of a jade necklace. And the man that he was hired to protect um, during this time was killed, and Marlowe is determined to get to the truth, no matter what stands in his way, and that may be to his detriment. So we have Marlowe, played by Dick Powell. We have strong guy Moose Malloy, played by Mike Mazurki. And then some other main characters are Lindsay Marriott, Anne Grail, Helen, and Jules Amthor, played by Otto Kruger.
And this week we will be comparing and contrasting with the somewhat similar, but in a lot of ways different, The Pearl of Death, which is a classic tale of one of the most famous detectives, Sherlock Holmes, as he tries to retrieve the priceless Borgia, I believe I'm saying that right, pearl, after its theft, which is basically his fault. And seemingly not connected at the same time. There's a bunch of murders going on, so they have to figure out why. But in that one, we have Sherlock Holmes John Watson, played by Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce, respectively. And then we have the character Giles Conover, the nemesis of Sherlock Holmes, played by Miles Mandor, Inspector Lestrade, and Naomi in the traditional role of the femme fatale, which doesn't actually work into the traditional role of the femme fatale in this version, played by Dennis Holey and Evelyn Ankers, respectively.
Yeah, so as Maeve has already alluded to today, we will be comparing and contrasting these two films, and especially, or in particular, rather, the two types of detectives that are introduced to us in these two films. And we've got a couple of points about, some similarities and differences that we found while we were watching these films.
So, mostly differences. There were not a lot of similarities that could be found, especially in specifics. There were a couple, mostly due in character traits. So the main character of Murder My Sweet, Philip Marlowe, and the main character of The Pearl of Death, Sherlock. They both do get into this situation through somewhat fault of their own. Philip Marlowe fails to protect this one guy, Marriott. He fails to protect Marriott, and his sort of code of ethics binds him to figure out what's going on and just sort of avenge his failure. And then Sherlock, in his own genius of stupidity, basically allowed the Borgia pearl to be stolen when he is trying to convince them that it's not safe where it is. But in doing so, just lets it run out the door. Those are pretty specific to the genre, though. Not the genre, the two films. The other very specific one was with Moose, and also the backbreaker antagonist of the Pearl of Death. They are both hulking, strong men who have their strings pulled by the antagonist with the use of a beautiful woman as leverage, and then they end up killing the antagonist in the end. It's pretty specific in terms of similarities.
I feel like that it's pretty specific in that case, but I feel like we have also seen like this like really strong, tall man a lot in film noir. I'm not sure to this level of specificity, but I definitely think that that's like an archetype that we have seen before in film noir, and we can't speak to the whole genre of the classical detective, but it was present in this instance.
And some other Out of My Past definitely there.
Yeah.
The first main guy.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, those are very specific similarities, and they were way more not similarities, whatever the antonym of similarities are.
Differences, perhaps.
Yes.
Yeah. Speaking of differences, this is a little jumping off point, I think, for me, to go into what I thought was probably the best part, which is just the language and the difference of dialogue and how these two detectives speak. So, I mean, obviously in the film noir genre, you have the hard-boiled kind of jargon, as we talked about last week or whenever that was. So, you know, we get these sentences that Philip Marlowe says, like something like, this is a quote, "I felt pretty good, like an amputated leg,"
It's
which
so
is just quintessential hard-boiled bullshit right there.
it's so like moody and angsty and dramatic and just like yeah, just like so dark for no reason.
Well, he's so happy with his narration throughout the whole film. In general, I think the moment when I realized, oh, he's gonna just be like a little jerk narrating in my ear was when he says something like, he's like narrating him walking around the city, and he just blurts out, "My feet hurt." It's like he's just like stream of conscious talking to you.
Yeah.
In this weird language he's got.
Yeah. I think that it's such a stark contrast to really like the classical detective kind of talk. And I think in The Pearl of Death, especially, there are some like totally like the antithesis of like everything that Philip Marlowe says. I think Watson has this line where he sits down with Sherlock to have lunch or dinner or something. He goes, "Kippers, splendid. I'm as hungry as a bee on a flower," which is just such like obnoxiously like flowery and like
tearful,
totally unexpected for like a crime movie. That just, you know, and I think it's also supposed to kind of comically oppose Sherlock as well, who's, you know, supposed to be this like very inherently rational human that, you know, he doesn't make mistakes. It's just like he just uses pure logic. Whereas, you know, you've got Watson, who's a bit more of a normal guy.
Puts his sleeve on the glue. Loses his paper.
Yeah, can't find it.
Yeah, I think it's just oh, never mind. I don't want to jump ahead.
But specifically to that, the Watson figure, that is a huge difference because there isn't one in Murder My Sweet. The PI is acting completely alone the entire time, and he's just really on his own. But
yeah, and even when he thinks he's got like a proper accomplice, or like he thinks that someone is on his side, it always turns out that they're really not. And so he really never has like a true companion in the crime. And I also feel like there was one cute little scene with Watson where like Holmes isn't there, and he's like, "Oh, what would Holmes do?" And he like starts to like act out what he would do, and it's just like he's the like the common man, just like kind of like a noir guy is more like that than Holmes. And so he has like this authority, this like you know, Holmes to default to and be like, oh, what is the example of like a true good detective? And there really, I feel like there really isn't that in noir.
Because the Watson comes from the narration is the hindsight and hindsight is 2020, which is
Mm-hmm.
that's where they're one step ahead, which is what Sherlock is
In real
all
time.
the time. Yeah, in
Yeah.
real time.
Totally. Yeah.
So Watson, I mean, the voiceover is kind of like Watson, but a Watson who the Sherlock or the PI can't consult with.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just there, and
it's still just him. It's
Mhm.
still him alone at the end of the day, and the only reason he knows what's going on is it already happened to him.
I think also him being alone and not having a Watson is like at least for me, like a clear choice for the PIs in the noir. Like they don't want a Watson. There's multiple times in Murder My Sweet where someone walks into Marlowe's office and he's like, "How'd you find me? How'd you know where I am?" Like, leave me alone. He loves the shadows, loves it, and if he had a partner, he wouldn't have that like obscurity and flow through this world.
And it's also true that like most times that we've seen like a partner, well, I'm thinking of one specific partner, he did not meet a very great fate in a noir film. What his name was Fisher?
Fisher.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Fisher was not very loyal. Watson is loyal to the end.
Yeah, and in the end, like he was also a traitor. So I feel like partners don't go very well historically for a noir detective.
Yeah, but Holmes and Watson, they go together because they're kind of the everyman and then also the extreme.
Yeah,
and that just balances each other out. But with the PI, it's sort of a mix because he's not technically the everyman. He, especially with Marlowe, he is a bit smarter. He is more into this weird underground stuff, being a PI, and knows how stuff works. But he's also definitely not Sherlock.
Yeah.
He knows that too. Like he'll bring up, I forget. There's a line in the movie where he says, like I make flaws and mistakes, but I still make them, or something like that.
Yeah. I also really like when he flat out says to Amthor, he says, "I don't get it," and Amthor goes, "I've always credited the private detective with a high degree of omniscience, or is that only true in rental fiction?" So like in that movie, they're like calling him out for not being like the kind of detective that Holmes is, like right in the script. They're saying.
Yeah, he doesn't have the breadth of knowledge that
you don't get it.
Yeah.
Like I'm sorry, but you don't get it like a classical detective.
Yeah. Plus I think it's part of the kind of noir. It's very typical of the noir detective to not have the kind of knowledge that Sherlock has. Like, you know, with Sherlock, it's kind of like he knows he can figure it out, or he believes that there is an ultimate truth that can be found. Whereas in just the entire world of noir, it's like nothing is certain. Nobody knows anything. No one is who they say they are. And you know, the only thing that they really know is that they don't know what's going on. And so in that way, I think it's almost like the noir detective could kind of be like his own Watson, his or her own Watson. Where, you know, Watson doesn't necessarily know how to like figure out what's going on. But you know, he still tries anyway and kind of fails. And like with the noir guy, you know, there's definitely a lot of like trial and error going on, and they usually end up trusting the wrong person. And the main difference is that, you know, in the classical detectives, you don't have those fatal consequences. You know, when there was that package that got delivered that Watson got that package that was for Sherlock, and you know, he was looking at it, was like, oh wow, maybe I should open it. And he was really thinking about it, and Sherlock comes in after the fact and he tells him like, no, it's like a trap, and he figures it out like from after the fact. You know, whereas the noir detective kind of just gets into something so deep and they can't get out, and the consequences are fatal.
Yeah. And I feel like that like sort of um quest for knowledge that is attainable that happens in a classical detective story um really like yeah, it can't happen in a noir universe. But also I wanted to say that Sherlock uh Holmes, he knows that it was firstly he before he knows that it's a knife in there, I think he knows that who delivered the package, um,
Hmm.
because he smelled like the type of cigar um, that the man had smoked. And I think like that like story that like I don't know what the
That
word.
mind palace.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that like storage container that he calls a brain, um, like doesn't exist it for like a PI and like the grimy world of like noir. Like it's just like, it's very rough and tumble, like learn as you go, figure it out, like, after you get knocked unconscious a few times and trust almost everybody who's wrong. And like the PI detective is really trying to figure out the details as everything is happening and falling down around them. Um,
Well, Sherlock just knows.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Holmes just literally knows either what just happened, he can explain it, or he knows what's about to happen, uh,
Mhm.
usually. And so, yeah, like when Lestrade tries to argue with Holmes because Holmes is saying that at the crime scene, there won't be any broken china under the woman because um, it was broken after she was killed. Lestrade is like, no, just to prove you wrong, let's look. And Holmes was right. And whereas like Marlowe goes to like meet a guy with Moose and it's like Amthor and he's like totally ambushed. And he there's actually a really good quote um from Anne, I think, and it says, I think you're nuts. You go barging around without a clear idea of what you're doing. Everybody bats you down, smacks you over the head, fills you full of stuff, and you keep right on hitting between tackle and end. I don't even think you know what side you're on. And he says, I don't know what side anybody's on. I don't even know who's playing today. Um, like he literally has no idea who he's even up against.
Mhm.
And
Hmm.
he doesn't know until the very end.
Yeah. He's just like completely in the dark. He like thinks he knows sometimes.
Literally at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he can't see.
It's like very crazy to compare the two, I think, because it's like this like all powerful knowledge holder almost who's like, haha, like, oh, if I mess up once, it's like a funny mistake and I'm gonna be fine and I'll just, kind of I'll figure it out. It's a little puzzle to me versus the like in the thick of it, you need to figure it out to save your own life and sometimes you might not,
Hmm.
you know.
It's like he's constantly figuring things out, like like you said, as it's happening, or when it's ultimately too late to do anything about, like by the time he's realized
Yeah.
how fucked he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he like kind of lets it happen to him. Like at one point, when Moose, right? Is that
The
his
big
Yeah.
hulking guy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
When he is talking about like getting in touch with him, well, yeah, Marlowe asks, how will I get in touch with you? And then Moose says, I get in touch with you. And he's like, okay.
Can't even contact the guy, giving him the job.
Yeah. So he just like, it's like, I don't know, the way he like stumbles into everything deeper and deeper every second is just so different to like the control that Holmes has over the
Mm.
situation that he's in.
Very different level of involvement in all the crimes that
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, I
And,
mean,
and
Marlowe just pretty much jumps head first into the crime.
Yeah.
um, which is the big distinction between um, the two films, where it's, especially in film noir, the PI detective just goes straight into the crime, generally for money, as
Hmm.
is seen by Marlowe, where he won't even like take Moose's job until Moose shows him money, saying, "I'm closing up the shop. Nah, get out of here." Moose shows him money, then he takes that, and then he keeps taking more money from other people, going further and further into the crime.
So much,
Um,
yeah, so much money changing hands.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's constant, and it's always. I noticed it's always incrementing by tens too. The money
Yeah.
is always multiplying by tens. He's like, "Oh, I'll take it." Um, yeah, he's personally involved in the crime, and he is determined to at least get to the end of it. One, because of his failings to protect the first guy, Marriott, and then obviously because he wants the $125,000 J necklace, because his eyes light up like crazy when he hears that number.
I know.
Um, and again, we've brought up like the paranoia and just kind of like the shadiness that the PI knows around him. Yet, despite fully knowing, oh, all these people are so shady, Amthor, don't know what he's up to, gives me bad vibes. Weird shrink, don't like him. But I'm gonna allow myself to get manipulated by him anyways, because it might mean I make $5. Um, is is essentially the level of involvement that Marlowe gets into, in comparison to Sherlock, where he's socially distant from the crime. He's
Yeah.
kind of staying 100 feet away from the crime.
He's also like
Yeah.
much more well established, I feel like Holmes. Like I
Mhm.
feel like he has a reputation, and like as much as like people don't love him like stepping on their toes,
Yeah,
like there's like he has a position in his community. He's like well established. He's not risking very much by getting involved. And he's like always keeping it very under control, very at arm's length.
right.
Um,
Meanwhile,
but
Marlowe's like risking life and death.
yeah, literally, like Marlowe within the first how like it's not that far in when he gets knocked out and Marriott gets
10,
killed.
15 minutes.
Uh, yeah, so he's like already really deep in this crime, and he like barely knows anything about the man who was just killed right next to him.
Yeah.
Um,
And he keeps going.
and he keeps
Yeah,
going.
he's like, oh no, no one's gonna kill me.
It gets just crazier from there.
Yeah.
Like, as if, like, why did he think it wouldn't? I don't know. I guess he would.
And then I guess on top of that, because like with the Marlowe getting knocked out, Marriott's dead, like feet away from him. Sherlock doesn't even see any crimes be committed. Essentially, like he's
Mhm.
only seeing a dead body when someone calls him to be there.
Yeah,
No
he gets
one's calling Marlowe to be there because no one likes him. Um, um,
yeah,
two, he doesn't want to be known.
yeah.
So no one's calling him to go to this crime scene.
He doesn't want that community position that like
No,
he has.
he wants
And
the shadiness to be in the crime.
yeah, yeah. At the end of the day, like he wants to be down and dirty and making that money and like kissing those women and saying weird things to them.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and like he doesn't want to be anywhere else. He doesn't want to be like the safe guy
No.
who tries to put together the pieces of plaster um, that he like took safely back
I
from.
mean, even granted, the doctor, I forget what the doctor's name is, but the doctor was shady. But even when Marlowe is in that doctor's office dungeon situation,
Lair.
yeah, whatever it is, um, the doctor's actively telling him, "Hey, man, you're not gonna feel good for a while."
Yeah,
He may or may not have poisoned him, so he knows the answer, and like you might die if you don't lie down. Marlowe doesn't give a shit.
no,
Just leaves.
Yeah, he's
I
really.
think
I feel like he gets really strung along by his emotions.
Yeah, for sure.
He starts
Mhm.
off not as emotional, and then slowly, as anyone would, he kind of starts to crack, and that's when his emotions show. Like, it's
Yeah.
kind of like that's how it is with most film noirs. They start off the typical brooding,
Level-headed.
and
Mhm.
then when this crazy stuff happens, like with anyone,
He
like
gets
he got kidnapped and he's been out for 30 days in a spider's web or something in his own mind.
Yeah.
In his mind, he's escaped 3 times, but he's still there. Anyone would crack there.
I know. Yeah.
Mhm.
Pretty intense stuff. And that would never happen to Holmes.
No.
That would never, ever happen to Holmes.
Not
If it
only
were
is
to
Holmes
happen,
too smart, but he's too far away.
Yeah.
He's Holmes is almost like untouchable.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
Marlowe is very easy to trap.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say also part of the reason why you know Holmes feels so kind of isolated as a character is he's not easily manipulated by the things that the average
ladies?
noir detective is, like women and money.
Absolutely.
Sherlock wants to find the truth because he believes that there is a truth out there to be solved and that truth is like an ultimate thing that can be attained.
Because
Whereas with Marlowe, it's like, money,
hot blonde.
women, maybe I solve a crime, that comes later.
Yeah.
But it's about kind of more of the pleasures of life than it is actually solving a crime for the sake of solving the crime.
Right.
Yeah. And I feel like it goes back to like also like in the world that like Holmes lives in, it really feels like there's like a logic and an order and like he's created a very controlled environment. Whereas like the noir detective really gives in to all of those desires.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even just like genre wise, there's zero logic and order in film noir.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
None of it makes sense on
Twist
purpose.
after twist.
Yeah, it's supposed to be chaotic, where, like you said, Holmes is just, this all makes sense.
Elementary, my dear Watson.
Yeah. Everything boils down to a simple explanation.
Yeah. And Holmes very clearly never strays into wanting women or money. Like, there's that one point where Naomi, the lady criminal, is getting away down a ladder, and I was thinking in a typical noir, they would probably make some comment about looking up her skirt.
Yeah.
But he just grabs her and just holds out, and it's probably other people, like other film noirs, do you mind, like, help her down from it, be a gentleman?
Yeah.
And Holmes is just, criminal, get down here.
He like
Yeah.
directly at the end, he's like, constable, put the cuffs on her. This woman is an accomplice. like very matter of fact, does not even perceive that she is a woman, basically.
Yeah. I feel like she would have been, if that had been a film noir, she would have been like the love interest.
Yeah.
The woman that the noir detective gets involved with. That's
definitely
what she would be. Yeah.
And I feel like there's this progression, this like convoluted thing that goes on with Marlowe and the women in that film, where like he kind of like, hits on Anne a little, and then he meets Helen and they start flirting like crazy, and he says like, she hires him and he goes like, is this for love, or are you paying me something in money? And they're like about to kiss and Anne walks in, but then like he has this conversation with Anne and she's like, what did you talk about? He goes, she wanted me to kiss her and find her necklace. And about Helen.
Yeah.
And then he like in the same conversation says that he seems to remember Anne from one of his dreams, like one of the better ones. So he's like talking about his thing with Helen in the same conversation as he's hitting on Anne.
Yeah.
He's
And
just
also he has dreams about women, which Sherlock.
Yeah.
I don't even know if Sherlock dreams.
yeah, no, all just like statistics and stuff up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Just thinking in code.
yeah.
He dreams in binary,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or he dreams in the Matrix code. I think, then also just it is everyone in film noir is so horny, just all the time, and there was basically none of that. I don't think, except for the backbreaker guy, but you don't really.
Yeah.
That's the only thing.
Yeah.
And that's
And
his
it's like
downfall.
clear that he's like, he's
Not
not the
right.
protagonist.
And not right in that reveal of his face was actually pretty creepy. They keep him in shadows the whole time, and then whoa,
I know.
this guy looks a bit like Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
I think it's. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you go.
I was just going to add that I thought it was kind of funny in the quote that you referenced, how that is this for love, or are you paying me something in money? That to me, just that's the brain of the PI detective. It's there are two options, and it's like women, money. That's like the only two things I'm getting out of any situation. Yeah, the two forms of currency. You're right.
For like a noir detective, yeah.
Yeah.
But Sherlock is just
maybe
information.
Like drinks too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, drinks. Yeah. Alcohol.
Drinks on the side. Yeah.
Drinks on the side wouldn't be the full motivation, but would be a bonus.
Yeah. Isn't he like taking alcohol throughout the film? Ooh, I just said that. Ooh. But if I'm remembering, Marlowe, as he's like going around, I mean, he's at that bar with Moose. Moose gets mad and, smashes some stuff up, and they leave, and he grabs a bottle of alcohol. Later, he's at that lady's house trying to find Moose's girlfriend. And after he leaves, on his way out, he grabs a bottle of alcohol and walks out. So he's constantly just like taking whatever he wants.
He needs it to buy, because the world is so rough and grimy and like horrible and cynical.
Yeah. It's so hard to be a noir.
That's the big difference. The world. One is super hard and cynical. Gritty. But it's really weird because the beginning of, the entirety, except for the last 30 seconds of Murder, My Sweet, is very gritty, hard, and cynical. And then it just ends with a really silly joke of, I'm about to kiss her. Wait, someone said don't have a gun on you when you kiss a lady. Let's take that out, making a silly face, and then make out. But with Sherlock, it's kind of campy. There's a lot of jokes. And then at the end, he kind of goes into this monologue about how this pearl, it has so much blood on its history, and it's killed so many people. And it ends with a very gruesome note. So it's a very different shift in tone. Like, one is very much gritty and real the whole time, and then silly joke about a gun.
Yeah.
And then the other pretty campy, and then just disturbing monologue about how this pearl has killed hundreds, and it will kill hundreds more until people stop valuing it.
Yeah, I feel like it's like kind of like a life lesson in the case of the pearl. And so like it's like more of a, like, it's a silly film, but I feel like it's more grounded in like the reality that the audience wants to see. Like, not for interesting value, but what they want to believe exists, maybe. And I think it's like they kind of want to see the life lesson. So it's like, this is how this isn't going to really happen in real life. And it's like, it's just if you're like greedy and bad and like whatever. But whereas the other one is just so full of twists and turns, I feel like the chaos of like a completely different ending kind of makes sense.
I enjoyed it. I laughed.
Honestly. Yeah, it's like, just one more little shock before you go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think in the ending of The Pearl of Death, it kind of speaks to this idea that, maybe the kind of world that the viewers want is one where the bad guys get caught and they pay for what they did, which is, you know, obviously very different from just a noir style film where like you are with the person that is actively committing crimes or allowing them to continue. And I think it's kind of what kind of a world do you want to surround yourself in? If you want something that's like, if you believe that there's like inherent order and truth to the universe and that like things all have reasonable explanations, then you'll probably really like The Pearl of Death or that type of film.
Yeah.
And then if you're a bit more cynical and in some ways kind of maybe a little bit like a hard-boiled detective, and you don't believe that there are any truths in the universe and that there's no order and the earth is inherently irrational and so are all its people, then you should definitely watch some noir, because that's what it is constantly.
Totally. Yeah, if you really want to lean into that like suspicion and paranoia, go noir.
All the way.
Yeah.
All right. And if you're in for just sort of a nice little ride of some camp and some people who are way smarter than you, then Sherlock is a very interesting ride. It's a very interesting and impactful ride too.
Yeah, so impactful.
Definitely impacted my life.
Definitely got a few dollops of knowledge.
Yes.
Oh, so many dollops.
So many dollops of knowledge. Very interesting and impactful knowledge too.
Yeah, I need to start sliding the word tool as in like a tool of like linen or something, because that's a new word that I've learned that certain people dislike. So I think if we can just say that really casually sometimes, that would be great.
I would have to agree.
Yes.
Yes, and we hope we have had a great impact on you.
Yeah, the deepest impact.
We will continue to impact. We hope this conversation has impacted you interesting folks. And we will be back next week with a very interesting and impactful dollop of conversation.
All right.
All right.
We'll see you then.
Next
Bye.
So long.